Well, we are just 29 days into the year and there's already been enough celebrity drama to fuel us for what seems like the entire year between the Beckhams, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Taylor Swift and the Sussexes. The circuit has already been spinning hot.
But what's next and where is Hollywood headed for 2026? For all the juicy details, we're joined by US entertainment reporter Brian Balthazar live in Philadelphia. Good morning to you. We got to start with the Beckhams, of course. 10 days since Brooklyn's explosive statement. And he's touched on getting the rights to his own name. How do you see all that playing out? And should we brace for some sort of big legal action in 2026?
I think anything could happen the year ahead. You know, one thing I think we won't see is a lot of social media interaction from his parents, Victoria and David. He's made it very clear he does not want them even commenting or liking his posts, and he's stated that publicly. He's also been courting publishers that are saying that they'd like to see a memoir. So it's interesting to see if he's going to monetize it in that way and what he's going to do in legal channels. I think there's still some chance at a reconciliation, but this book deal is really pivotal for him because that could be a financial windfall, a disaster for Victoria and David.
Speaking of finances, Nicola, that is Brooklyn's wife, her reported monthly allowance from her dad is making headlines this morning. Do you think there's any truth to this big number?
Well, okay, yeah, it's an interesting question because we do know that her parents are billionaires, correct? And so what we're hearing from a British journalist on a podcast saying that she receives $1 million a month. Okay, so that's a shocking number to say the least. But when you're a billionaire, is that like to one of us getting $100 a month? Who knows? So what's interesting though is part of the dynamic and the complexity of this relationship with Brooklyn and his parents is that he doesn't need them for money. And so there's less pressure, perhaps, some might say, to reconcile when he's got this financial windfall on this other side of the family. Who knows if it's true, but suffice it to say that money does exist on her side of the family. And so financial struggles are really not part of their narrative.
Yeah, right. Hey, also in the UK, and we're closely watching Prince Harry's trial against the Daily Mail, alongside Sir Elton John and Elizabeth Hurley, of course. But the Sussexes also made a surprise appearance earlier this week at the Sundance Film Festival. Will they be laying low this year? Is it even possible for them to lay low?
Well, it's very interesting. It's a delicate balance they'll be striking in the year ahead because they want to balance their demand for privacy with the hope of promoting their projects on their own terms. And part of that is making public appearances. Part of that is making themselves available to the press. Now, we won't know what happens regarding this trial for several weeks, a few months at best. And so now, as we see them navigate public appearances, it's interesting because Meghan's series on Netflix has not been picked up for another run. So they're now promoting a documentary about Girl Scout cookies and the sales of Girl Scout cookies. But we haven't seen a lot of success in their projects. So now, in a very complicated media landscape, they're going to have to try and find new projects. And part of that is making themselves available to the press. So it's a very tricky balance.
She's promoting a 2-pack of jam ahead of Valentine's Day. Yeah, I did notice that. For the first time, you're getting the 2-pack. Across the pond, we're just 2 months away from the court case of the year, the century, Blake Lively's scheduled trial against Justin Baldoni. It seems like it's been coming forever. Do you think we're actually going to get to see Taylor Swift and/or Ryan Reynolds take to the stand?
Well, I think we will probably see Ryan Reynolds take to the stand and probably Jenny Slate because she was on set and part of the production. I will be surprised, although anything can happen in Hollywood. I would be surprised if Taylor Swift does take the stand. Her involvement in this is very fringe and really involving these texts that were just released. And I think those pretty much speak for themselves. She was not visiting the set. So they're really just part of the salaciousness of this very juicy Hollywood story. But keep in mind that Baldoni's camp is really hoping that this lawsuit gets dismissed. But we do know, if no one else, the star witness will be Blake Lively herself. She will be taking the stand. This is her case, her story, and we'll be hearing a lot when that comes out.
All right, and another one for the entertainment industry back home. Excuse me, President Trump still wants tariffs on films made outside of the US, and we're pumping out some great movies here in Australia. Do you have any idea of how we'll be impacted here in Australia with this?
This is going to be very complicated to work out because, as filmmakers will tell you, it's rare that any film is solely produced or made in one place. Perhaps shooting could take place in Australia and editing could take place in the UK, and writing could take place in the United States. So it's going to be very difficult to work out the details of this. Now, this is not the first time the president has mentioned wanting to do this, to bring back filming to Hollywood, but it's really not quite that simple, which is why it's taken this long to have him say it again. It's really hard to work out. So I think it's going to be a long time, or at least a good amount of time, before we really see if this is really going to come to fruition.
Yeah. All right, Brian, any opportunity to talk about all of those people? We've just appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.